got myself the Space Marine Codex last week on Tuesday, actually, and I want to go over the book, primarily talking about the mechanics of the game, mostly, because if I wanted to go into the lore about it, I'd need to look at every other codex to keep track of it. I have the 9th edition Space Marine Codex on my shelf here, but I don't like comparing and contrasting just yet. So, Space Marines in general are a bit of an odd thing. All Space Marines have a universal rule called the Oath of Moment, which even those not using any of the book's detachments can use. Dark Angels, Death Watch, Space Wolves, or even unspecified chapters can use it, on top of their own chapter-specific army rules. But for those not falling into one of these specific chapter rules, we've got 7 detachments now, each made with a specific chapter in mind, but with their rules. Others can work as well. We've got one we originally got called the Gladius Task Force, then the Anvil Siege Force, followed by the Ironstorm Spearhead, then Firestorm Assault Force. Quickly coming in afterwards is the Stormlance Task Force, then the Vanguard Task Force, and taking up the rear is the 1st Company Task Force. Now, each of these is based off a specific chapter or successor chapter, as I mentioned, but they can also be used in general too. With how detachments are made, each detachment is for a specific build in mind. I originally wanted to go into details of each detachment's abilities, enhancements, and stratagems, but that made my script about 30 minutes long, so I'm going to have to go into brief idea of each detachment and give a basic idea of what each one is good for. Gladius Task Force was the one that started out with the game before the Codex released. It is described as being an adaptable Codex Astartes idea, basing off of the Ultramarines in the picture. I think this is good to compare to the Black Spear detachment for a Death Watch army, if you want a comparison. It's a good army for if you want to build around guns with a small touch of melee. With how this works, if you have some multiple attacks for guns, this is a good detachment. Next is the Anvil Siege Force, which is artistically designed around the Imperial Fists. This army is meant for bigger units with heavy armor and heavy guns. Great for things like the Devastators, Aggressors, Intercessors, or even Terminators, though them probably a little less so. The Anvil Siege Force can essentially build a wall of their units, carpet bomb the enemy if they don't move, and essentially just say, "No, you move." If you like big guys with big guns, this is a good idea for you. Next up is the Ironstorm Spearhead. This thing is designed, even named, after the Iron Hand chapter of Space Marines. There are enhancements and stratagems too. This detachment is designed to be a brute force. This can be a good idea for a heavy vehicle army, enjoying the use of tech marines, tanks, and razorbacks. Now we get the Firestorm Assault Force. This army is meant for light armor and fast guns, giving all ranged weapons the assault ability, and makes closer enemies wish they had stayed away. This whole thing is modeled after the Salamanders in mind. I could see this working for White Scars too, honestly, because of the need for speed and the constant movement. Intercessors, Assault Intercessors, and such are great with this army. Now the Stormlance detachment. This is something interesting to me. I love White Scars. This detachment is designed for vehicle and mounted units primarily, mostly the mounted units. It allows rerolls for those on bikes, lets you pull from the strategic reserve sooner, or boost your melee hits while mounted. Vanguard Spearhead is built with the Raven Guard, though I could see some making a Loyalist Alpha Legion or even Dark Angel army with this detachment. It builds off of stealth, essentially, making your units harder to hit or giving other abilities that are based around being in the shadows. First Company Task Force seems to be an interesting one. While not really designed around a specific chapter, it acts like the old Oath moment. It allows you to reroll wounds as well as hits, twice if you miss. This whole thing seems to be designed to fit the lore of the Space Marines being a fearless warrior that inject fear into other enemies. Good work for Grey Knights, actually. Now, I want to point out that my original script had 3 pages fully loaded, and I only went into 2 detachments. If you like lore, this book has at least 37 pages about Space Marines before having single page about each of the major chapters. There's definitely more. Don't get me wrong. I just know the game's mechanics more than the lore, and the lore I essentially know the most basics in order to run a Wrath and Glory game with my friends when they ask to play it. The best part about this book is the artwork and the pictures, in my opinion. I love them. It gives me ideas for new armies and even how to place my units to take photos once I maybe finish painting them? Possibly? I probably won't. But another good part about this book is what symbols and helmets mean. On the right shoulder, it shows essentially what that unit's job is, while the left shoulder is the chapter and companies. The helmet shows rankings too. This book will give you a list of successor chapters showing their colors and emblems. They give a short paragraph about each successor chapter and who they succeed from. 4 pages with 6 to 8 different successors. Next 2 pages after that are unknown successors. And one thing I really like is it actually put the White Templars there. Why do I find this significant? Well, with the Leviathan event, the White Templars lost their chapter world of Sanctum in the 4th Tyrannic War, with the Tyranids having destroyed the world of Aughrim. When they lost their world, several chapters got together, looked at the White Templars' gene seed, and the White Templars, having believed they were they were successors of the Imperial Fists. The Council then realized, hey, y'all ain't actually successors of the Imperial Fists, so we ain't got a clue. Now the White Templars are going around trying to figure out, hey, who the hell are we? It also has my space sharks here, the Carcharodons, which I will fight, saying that they are a successor of the White Scars, although most likely they're a combination of several parent chapters. Like I stated before, the pictures are probably the best part, but I've always liked the showcases. This, in combination with the successor chapters, gives a lot of inspiration. It's a fun bit. I also enjoy the writing of the stories I can do. I often find myself making stories behind the games I play with my friends. Now, as I stated, I do have the 9th edition Codex too. I know a bit about it, but I bought it just as 10th edition came out, not realizing it wasn't what I thought it was. I know that the old Codex had chapter rules, which is actually what got me into the Death Watch. I'd like to see if they add more chapter armies that can use the codexes and their own. I'd love to see them add a Salamander army rule, perhaps involving Meltas or Flamers, or perhaps a Raven Guard army rule that allows them to utilize stealth even more than what this detachment book allows. This isn't really a review, though. This book is rather necessary, however, if you use any Space Marine army, as it shows changes of various different units, including point prices and even allows the phone app to access the data sheets. I wish the phone app didn't do that, as it seems like Games Workshop just wants more money on top of the nearly $60 they charge per set of plastic. Sometimes more, depending on what it is, but rarely ever less. Will GW ever change? No, I guarantee it. When the economy does better, if GW is still around, the prices will remain the same, as that's what companies do, despite the fact that it costs less to make them. Do I have a solution? Unfortunately, no. Well, yes, but no. What it would involve is y'all giving another company a chance. Try a different game that actually competes. Hasbro tried with HeroScape, and y'all should know the venom I have against Hasbro. It's why I made Conqueror Creations. But it's extremely difficult to make competition and be seen. Battletech is competition, but Catalyst Game Labs has terrible business model with it and leads to them asking for Kickstarter money every time they come out with update rules, unfortunately. But I've got crap to do. What? Trying to write up better plan for Kickstarter relaunch for Conqueror Creations. I think I have a better plan now, so shove off.